Lawsome by ConsultWebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.
Hello, everyone. Today on our show, we're talking with Claire Parsons about the art and the benefits of meditating and practicing mindfulness in the legal profession. Claire is a lawyer, a mom, writer, speaker, and a leader. She's been practicing law for over a decade now and has obtained a meditation teacher certification from the Mindfulness Center. Passionate about mindfulness, she loves showing fellow lawyers and other professionals what it can do for them. Claire, welcome to the Lawsome Show.
Thank you very much, Tanner. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. So let's start with maybe a simple opener here. What is mindfulness to you? How do you describe it?
Mindfulness, I think, is just basic awareness of what's going on in the present moment without judging it and pushing it away. And I would also include with that a general attitude of friendliness and acceptance. Mindfulness and compassion are kind of interrelated content areas and subjects, but in terms of my own practice and how I teach it and use it, I really do think compassion is a piece that should be included in that definition.
You've been practicing mindfulness for a while now. Was there any specific aha moment in your life that pushed you toward practicing mindfulness in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I learned mindfulness the old-fashioned way, which is I drove myself crazy for no apparent reason, and then decided to start meditating to take better care of myself. I had a difficult pregnancy with my first daughter. She's now 9. She's doing fine, but she was diagnosed as IUGR when she was in utero. And I had to deal with that for about 20 weeks. And then I had her. It was a difficult birth experience. I couldn't breastfeed her because she was tongue-tied. And I kind of just felt like a bad example of a woman, not a good mom. I felt like my law practice kind of got taken away from me. So my whole identity got shifted and changed right before my eyes. And I did not respond to the situation with self-compassion. I overthought everything. I judged myself terribly. I didn't ask for help. And I got through that, fortunately. My mom is actually a family law lawyer. And so she knew how to handle a crisis. So she got me to my doctor and therapy and stuff like that so I could bounce back from that and get back to work and stabilize myself. But after I did that, I realized that something in my life had to change and that I had to start really looking at how to take care of myself, because for the first time in my life, I had someone else who really depended on me being okay. And that was something I couldn't fail at. And so I had to start doing things to take care of myself. And meditation was one of those things. I actually started when I was prepping for a 2-week wrongful death trial out of town. And I was so busy at that time, I couldn't decide what to do next. And so I started sitting for 1 to 2 minutes a time, like in my closet. It was the only place I could find a quiet spot in my house. And it immediately helped me. And then a lot of other steps have been taken since then. But it was just something that helped me find stability, check my thoughts, and get back on track so that I could keep working and do what I needed to do.
Thank you, first and foremost, for just being vulnerable enough to share that story. And I'm sure you've touched so many lives just being willing to share that. It takes courage to be able to take action there, and it takes even more courage to be able to share that. You've been a tremendously successful attorney. And with that, how has motherhood affected your way of viewing life? And what are maybe some of the challenges that motherhood has brought along?
Both of my parents are lawyers, and so they really have always been guides for me. And I think because women like my mom, who started practicing in 1980 and was told she couldn't wear pants to court, for decades because they suffered through some of that stuff. My generation, as much as we're still dealing with stuff, benefited from that. And we have role models to look up to. So I feel really fortunate, as much as I acknowledge that we still need to keep working and pushing for change. But it is an identity shift. And I think my mindfulness practice sort of grew up with my motherhood, right? I kind of experienced both at the same time. And I think when I was younger, I wanted to present as this very rational, tough professional. And I honestly think most of the time when I was trying to look like that, I was not being very effective. I wasn't being authentic to myself. I was fighting a lot of battles I didn't need to fight. I was creating problems that didn't need to exist. And so, I think some of motherhood has just been humbling for me. But some of it has also been empowering. And it's been empowering in the sense that, I mean, our culture devalues care in general, and it looks at it as weak. And what it actually is, when you do it right, is power. It's power to make change. It's power to deal with difficult things. It's power to guide and influence, but do it in an effective way. And so that is in part, I've learned that from my mindfulness practice. And I've also learned it from, not reacting every time my toddler has a tantrum on the floor. Some of those same skills also work when your clients or opposing counsel have a tantrum in a deposition. It's not easy by any stretch, but I am grateful for the experience of having been a mother now and a practicing lawyer, because they definitely both help each other and help me get through both roles.
We all know motherhood is arguably a full-time job in and of itself, but there are all other challenges, or we'll say obstacles, that other lawyers are dealing with in addition to, trying to practice law. Have you found any particular or common symptoms attorneys have dealt with that you've experienced that would help them recognize that maybe they need to start practicing mindfulness themselves?
When we talk about mindfulness, it's often talked about as a potential solution to the epidemic, I guess, of attorney wellness that we're experiencing. I don't think that's only attorneys. I think some of that is cultural. So I don't think that we should necessarily just think if you have these symptoms, you might benefit from meditation. I would probably think more like, is there something I can do in my life that might make myself happier and healthier? And meditation can do that for a lot of people. But I will say, like, the experience that I had with meditation, one of the reasons really helped is that I was overthinking a lot. Like, I would overthink about things, worries in the future, regrets about the past, get lost in stories in my mind about things that never happened. I mean, it would be for weeks and months, potentially. I mean, it would be long periods of time. And I would do it so much that I wouldn't reach out for help, and I would isolate myself. It's kind of like I knew it was a little bit crazy, but I kept doing it because I didn't know how to stop. If you're doing things like that, that could be a symptom of an anxiety disorder. Anxiety disorders are things that take a long time to get diagnosed for many people. So meditation can help with that because it helps you start to be aware of your thoughts. So I would say that if you have more extreme mental health situations, or you think you are depressed, meditation actually can heal depression. But I would also say, do not be reluctant to seek out additional help from a therapist or mental health provider. When I was dealing with my own experience with my pregnancy, I tried to meditate at that time, but I was so distraught that every time I would sit quietly for a second, I would start crying or break down, and it would make it harder. And then I would feel like a failure because I couldn't even meditate, right? So, I think some of these things are things that you can do to help yourself. If the more you feel unstable, though, that's when I think you should also look out for other people and other supports. One of the things about my practice that has been really remarkable is not only that I've been able to learn how to care for myself, watch my thoughts better, do things for myself, but it's also led me to other things and practices that have been helpful. One of the most foundational ones is that it has helped me to reach out to friends for support, or other people for support when needed. So it's not really only one thing you should do, but it's part of the fundamental practices that you can take in your life to make it a better one.
In this profession, or in the legal profession, there's a lot of energy. It requires a lot of energy. And most attorneys, or I guess the status quo, if you will, is that they're always on the move. There's always something to do. Every minute is allocated toward something within the practice. And that obviously takes a toll. Many are on the fence with that mindset that they're going from one thing to the next. That's the way it's always been. And that's what they know. Some may be on the fence when it comes to, is meditation even for me? And I'm sure you've heard the phrase, I just can't sit still. It's an excuse. I read in an article you had contributed in Above the Law, where you had stated that you had found stressful situations in your life, in the law practice, that they were easier to manage when you were able to take a moment just to pause and choose a response instead of reacting. and fix the problem instead of making it worse. I often tell my children that, you can respond or you can react. And usually response takes a moment to really understand the situation and try to approach it with with a mindset to change it. So with all that being said, do you have any tips for those that feel that their mind is just constantly going and maybe they are on the fence of even taking time to start the practice of meditation?
I think that a lot of times when people ask me about meditation and I teach it and they say, "Oh, Claire, it must be so nice that you're so naturally calm." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I don't meditate because I'm naturally calm. I meditate because I'm naturally not. I am very intense. I will argue with anybody. I mean, that's why I'm a lawyer. I love it. I love arguing. And it sometimes is entertaining, but I have to really watch it because I can do a lot of damage really quick with my tongue when I'm talking to people and I get riled up. And I think all of us right now know that everyone's like that right now and all the damage it's causing. And so taking time to reflect on that and chill out a little bit can really be beneficial right about now. But in terms of like, you can't sit still or your thoughts won't sit still, that's all normal stuff. I do find in my own practice that the times that I'm really busy are the times I actually want to meditate more because I know I need it. It's the times that I don't want to think about something or feel something or acknowledge something. That's when I struggle to practice. So I'm not accusing anyone of anything in terms of why they don't meditate. And I don't think it's the only way to go about it. Like, I think there's lots of different ways that people can bring more calm and stability into their lives. But I will say, just maybe ask yourself the question, is this really just resistance? Am I really afraid of feeling something that I just don't want to face yet? And if that's the case, then you don't need to judge yourself. Then you just need some compassion. But at some point, you maybe need to look at that, because the stuff that you don't want to feel, a lot of times when you do face it, you see it's not that bad and you learn how to care for it. And that's how you grow. So, I mean, I think part of that idea is resistance. I think the other piece is just habit. And with lawyers, like we are high energy and we want to be constantly moving, and our culture really pushes us that way. But at the same time, we got to always look like we know what we're doing. We've got to always look like we're controlled and calculating, and we know every next step. And so we have this sort of cognitive dissonance always running through our lives. But you can't know every next step and do every next step right if you never look at where you're going. So, one of the things about mindfulness that I think is most important, I do general counsel and litigation work for clients. And my clients will a lot of times call me with a very brief question or text me something or email something very brief. And my answer to them is call me. And my answer to them is call me because I need to really fully understand what it is they're going through and what it is they're looking for before I can start to answer their question about what to do next. And that's what mindfulness is. It's saying, call me to your life. It's sitting down, looking at what is actually there, trying to get through a lot of the stuff you have built up in terms of habits, in terms of pushing things away, overlooking things, not deeming some things not acceptable to be acknowledged, getting through that, getting down to the ground level facts. And then it's really clear what you do next at every step. I mean, when you keep looking back and getting clear vision, then you know what to do. So that's really what mindfulness can do for people.
There's one aspect that I wondered if you had hit on, but we'll go ahead and dive right into it. And that's the aspect of, practicing the law. Yes, high demand. Well, obviously high demand, but there's also, it's a lucrative opportunity. And I think that is a driver for a lot of attorneys, is that, the more they work, the more they can earn. Obviously not all attorneys, but that's certainly a driver in some aspects. And so I'd like to hear, because of how fast the legal profession is and it's moving, how can mindfulness impact the money aspect, right? So the question is there, I'll use the term return on investment. We live the lawsome world. We live in marketing, and we all often look at things through the lens of, will it generate return? So can you speak to that? Have you seen a return on your investment in mindfulness? And is that something other lawyers could look at too?
I mean, the truth is, lawyers, as much as we say we want to bill as much as possible and we are always trying to promote our business, none of us work all the time. I mean, that most studies indicate that people who work, more than 40 hours long term, they have reduced efficiencies, that the time they're spending isn't really productive. And, we're going through a period of change in the legal profession that I think we're going to see more of in terms of how even the billable hour works and things like that. So, I mean, I think like at a certain point, you're probably not going to be cutting into your law practice to develop a meditation practice. What you might be cutting into is like wasted time scrolling on Instagram or Netflix time or something like that. So you're talking about exchanging, low quality time for high quality time. And so, there's just not even a comparison between that kind of stuff. But I will also say, business isn't always a direct thing. In terms of like new business development, and marketing, and networking and those kind of things, those are so indirect and strange sometimes how business comes to you. And you don't necessarily always have direct control over things, but what really does work is consistent effort, and the willingness to innovate. And to have the courage to do that, to have the drive to do that on a consistent level over time, you have to take care of yourself. You are your product. So if you are not figuring out how to keep your mind right in a world that is crazy, in a life that is bound to encounter obstacles and adversity and loss, like, of course you have to take care of yourself to be able to do that stuff long term. I mean, we walk into court or into major negotiations with high stakes for our clients. We take on risk, we take on their problems and say, we'll fight through them. We have to take care of ourselves to handle those issues. And what's more, we deserve to be happy because we are willing to do that for our clients. So absolutely, it's return on investment. I can't put it to you in dollars and cents terms because I think meditation is something that you start meditation and then you start to see what else in your life you might need to change or fix or keep doing. And it's those things that maybe are more directly related to your bottom line. But the meditation is the more fundamental piece that you maybe have to do first to get there. But I can tell you without a doubt, it is a return on your investment. But I also think that lawyers are worth more than just the dollars that we bring in. And I think that matters too.
It absolutely matters. I think you're on a roll right now, smashing some misconceptions right now. So let's stay on that roll. I'm interested in the concept of those who perceive mindfulness or taking time for meditation to potentially risk causing them to be softer. We've touched on some society or cultural expectations that whether they're right or wrong, they are there. And so what would you say to an attorney where that's on their mind, where it's going to cause them to be soft, and which in turn may make them less effective in their ability to practice law successfully?
I think the first answer, and I wrote a blog post on this and it was kind of like a little tongue in cheek, but the first answer is, let's be like really practical about this. So you're saying that meditating, like what, starting 5 minutes a day, which is about what I recommend for new meditators. So you're going to do something for 5 minutes a day, and you think you're going to be so good at it at the beginning that it's going to radically change who you are and your personality, and you won't be able to control that. And by the way, this is a practice that we're talking about that increases awareness of what is going on right now. So you're going to be so good at it right away that you're going to just be soft and turn into an enlightened being right off the bat. Like, let's be practical. That's not going to happen. Most people who start meditating are like, what am I doing? Am I doing it wrong? Like, I can't even find my breath, let alone focus on it. Like, that's more really what it's about. So it's really unlikely that a small practice is immediately going to change your life. And that's not what happened to me. What I did notice immediately was I stopped rushing so much. My thoughts, I was more aware of my thoughts. I started to be a little bit nicer to myself and others, and lo and behold, my practice and my life improves. So it's stuff that happens gradually over time. But to the softer point, I honestly think most lawyers could benefit from being a little bit softer, primarily from being softer on themselves. But I don't think that softness is weakness. I mentioned earlier the compassion aspect, and it's something that really is very powerful. I'll give you an example, and I wrote about this earlier this year. I've had some really major litigation I've been involved in the past, and sometimes that's really scary. And I had to sit with those feelings of fear, in being the lawyer to go lose this case and all of that stuff. And I had to sit with that. And once I let that be there for a while, and I just cared for myself through that, I was a rock star. I did an awesome job. I kind of could leave the fear behind, or at least let it sit next to me, as my co-counsel as I walked into court, without causing too much of a ruckus. That's softness, but it isn't weakness. It's absolute power. And when lawyers can appreciate that, I think we're better for it. And I'll tell you, most of the best litigators I know, they're not the jerks. The best litigators I know are excellent people. They'll work with you. They'll be understanding if you have life issues. They'll absolutely eat you alive in a brief if you make a wrong argument, but they won't treat you badly, and they won't be mean to the court or anyone else for no good reason. Softness has a place in our work. It is why we do our jobs. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think the problem is a lot of lawyers think we don't deserve it, or it's not right for us. And also culturally, Americans in the West, we just struggle a lot with the idea of self-compassion. I think it's unlikely that meditation will change you right away. But I think if it does change you and makes you a little softer, I think you'll be better for it. I think you'll be stronger for it, not weaker for it.
So for those who are now convinced, that this 20, 30-minute conversation we've had, they're ready. They're ready to take the next steps. Are there any practical, kind of action-oriented steps or blueprint maybe that you could offer them in terms of getting started and finding this for their own day-to-day practice?
Yes. If they want to start practicing, I would say go look at some of the apps and just explore them and see which ones you like, see which meditation teachers they have, which voices do you like, which styles do you like, and just notice which ones you like. Because a lot of times lawyers, we don't do stuff for us that we like. We do stuff that we have to do. And so give yourself that chance. And then I would invest in one. I think like 10% Happier, Calm, Headspace, all of those big apps are pretty high quality, and they've got some of the best teachers in the world on them. They all have intro courses. Let yourself do those. I also have some meditations on my blog as well. But I would start with small increments of time. If you can't do 5 minutes, start with 1. That's what I did, and just work your way up. And then there's books and resources out there to explore. If you really can't sit still, I would consider doing some yoga. I'm also a certified yoga teacher, and yoga has not been my passion. I actually needed mindfulness so that I could do yoga because I was too judgmental at first. But becoming aware of your body and just connected to your body and how you feel, that's an aspect of mindfulness, and it's a really beneficial for us very rational, cerebral lawyers who are often lost in our heads. Try that way instead. And I think in general, maybe try, a few things such as, turning off the music in your car on your commute, just sitting, having some silent time and build that into your day. Learning to take a deep breath every now and then. A deep breath is like 10 seconds if you do a real full one in and out. 10 seconds in a stressful situation, I think you can understand how getting that habit into your life can be life-changing. Starting to recognize just how you feel in your life and acknowledge it. Maybe even just tell your partner or your best friend, I feel this way and I'm worried about it and I need help. Those are all the kind of things that they're mindfulness practices, and you probably already do some of them. You just don't know it. But taking that a step further and actually bringing it to make it a real habit, that's how you start to really get the benefits. I do recommend a daily practice if you can do it of a short period of time. I would say it's better to meditate every day for 2 minutes than once a week for an hour. And because you want that daily habit, but sort of start small, let it grow, start to notice things you haven't before, and see where it takes you.
Great advice. You mentioned your blog, Claire. Do you mind sharing that web address for those who want to check it out?
Yes, my blog is a Brilliant Legal Mind, and it's brilliantlegalmind.com. We are on WordPress, as well as Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And we have a YouTube channel with lots of guided meditations on it. And if you go to the website and want to join the newsletter, you can just put your email address in and join that way. So I would appreciate that if you'd follow or check out the blog. And also, I'm on LinkedIn, and I actually use it and look at my messages. So feel free to connect or reach out there. I really like talking about mindfulness and with other lawyers, so don't be shy.
Claire, thank you so much. We're grateful for your time and your insights.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Blossom by ConsultWebs with Tanner Jones. For show notes, links, and info, go to consultwebs.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Watch for the next Blossom episode to discover more breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm.